In this After Effects tutorial, we're going to recreate the 6-second bumper video.
3, 2, 1.
We'll begin by importing the video portion that's been provided in the tutorial folder. I'll hit Command-I or go to File, Import, locate the folder, and in that folder you'll see Dunkinrocket P2.mp4. I'm going to let it define my composition by dragging into the blank comp window to the right. Now I'm going to extend the timeline. Right now, if we look at the time here, it's 5.03 seconds. The final piece will be 6 seconds, but we've got some changing of speed to do here so that we can add the rocket coming out of the composition that's on the drawing board. First I'll go to Composition, Composition Settings, and I'll change the duration to 6 seconds. And I'll select the timeline, hit minus on the keyboard to see the entire time range we have available. Now I want this to take up 3 seconds only. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to Time and I'm going to go to Time Stretch. And in the new duration window, I'm going to select all the numbers and put in 300, click OK, and it's now reduced that time to half the duration of our final process. Now, it's playing much quicker. I need the background, though, the very last frame of this movie, to extend statically out to the 6-second interval. So, with the video clip selected in the timeline, once again I'll right click, once again I'll go to Time, and the first choice is Enable Time Remapping. And now I can stretch that last frame out to the end of the 6-second bumper. That will serve as the background for the rocket that will fly out of the top of the drawing board. I'm now going to import in the Photoshop file. Now I'll hit Command-I, I'll go to the tutorial folder, and I'm going to select Dunkinrocket Spin2.psd. Down at the bottom, I have to make a choice for Import As under Format. I'm going to change it from Footage to Composition Retain Layer Size. That will bring in this PSD comprised of the separate layers of the rocket spinning so that I can incorporate it into the final video. I'll hit OK. And in my project window now, I'm going to see 2 new entries. The one that says Dunkinrocket, and it has a red, green, blue button composition, and then the folder that allows me to use these individually if I wanted to. I'm going to start by double clicking on the comp button with the red, green, and blue. And when I do, it opens that up in its own window. Now the first thing I'm going to do is go into the composition window, and to the left of active camera, if I click on that checkerboard, it's showing me that the background is transparent. And the pictures were edited out in Photoshop, removing the background, so now that they'll appear into the integrated video clip that we've just extended for the duration of the 6 seconds. I'm going to start by shift selecting from the top down all of the images. I'm going to rotate. If I would hit W on the keyboard, it takes me to the rotation tool in the upper left-hand corner of After Effects. I'll click anywhere on the imagery and straighten it out as best I can. I want it to also fit inside this comp window. So if I would hit S on the keyboard, with all of them selected, I can now go in and change the scale of the clip on top, and all of them will change as well. My objective now is to line them up one after the other so it spins in sequence. So again, I want to make sure that I'm selecting from the top down, holding the shift. I'm going to close out the function for scale, and I'm going to set the time for, I think I'll make this 8 frames. So I'll hit 8 on the keyboard, hit return, and now I'm going to cut them all there. Now, if I'm looking at my entire 6-second duration for the rocket, you can put your cursor over the far right-hand side, the very last clip. And as you do, you'll notice there's a 2-headed horizontal arrow. Now that I see that, I can hold my shift and I can snap all of them collectively to that playback head. Now I want to line them up one after the other so I see the spinning sequence. Because I've selected from the top down, holding the shift, I would now go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Sequence Layers. I'm going to click OK. If I was to put my playback head at the end of the very last clip and adjust my render bar to that point in time, the render bar is the flat gray bar flanked on either end by a blue rectangle. I can click and drag, shift and snap to my playback head. And now I'm going to go to the beginning, tap my space bar, and I can see now I have that cycle of rotation, and it'll just simply repeat itself. I'm going to now line them up a little better because some of them are jumping around a little bit too high. Now when we do this sort of an animation, this stop frame animation, a little of that herky-jerky is kind of desirable, but this might be a little bit much. I'm going to add my rules. As in Photoshop, if I would hit Command R on the keyboard, it would give me my rules. I could go to View, and you'll see the rules there as well. I'm going to put my playback head over the first frame, and I'll just drag a guide to the tip of the rocket, and then roughly through the center. Now I'll go frame by frame, and I'll just move these a bit so that they're a little bit less erratic in the movement. And I'm not trying to do this perfectly because that, again, it is desirable to have that imperfection to give it that hand-hewn quality that stop frame animation has. Now that I have the frames arranged on screen the way I'd like them to be, I have one thing I have to do with this now. The rocket has to go much faster than this cycle, and it's already running at nearly 5 seconds. So I'm going to export this out as a QuickTime movie with that alpha channel so that I can loop it as many times once I bring it back in and change the speed to what I need. So making sure that the default black background is turned off and that my render bar is defining what I would like to export, I'm going to go to Composition, Add to Render Queue. And in the render queue, I'm going to name the file, and I'm going to direct it to my folder. I'm going to click on the word lossless next to Output Modules. And in the attribute box for this compression and export window, I'm going to leave it at QuickTime. I'm going to change it from channel RGB to RGB alpha. That will give us the background in addition to the image. And I'm going to turn the audio off just to make the file size a little bit smaller. Now, I'll also click on Format Options just to confirm the default video codec animation is chosen, and that will assure me that I get that alpha channel. I'll click OK again, and then click on Render. Now that I've rendered this movie, I'm going to return to my original composition, and I'm going to import that movie with the alpha channel into my project window. And I'm now going to drop it on my comp. And there we have it. Now I need to line up how I want the rocket to come off the page. So I'm going to drag it to the right a bit, and I'm going to put my playback head right where it begins to come off the page. Now, what I've already done is I've put a marker roughly where I need it. And I can put a marker in by selecting the clip in question and then hitting the asterisk key on the number pad. That's the little star shape above the minus sign. And that'll give me an idea of where I need this to begin. I'm going to drag the alpha channel rocket to that point in time holding the shift. And I'm going to put it over the page and the rocket on the page. Now if I were to tap this, I can see first of all it's going too slowly in a circle, revolving. And I need to keyframe it to go off the screen as well. So I'm going to start by changing the speed of it. And I'll just pull this to the side so that I can kind of eyeball the speed of this. And I'm just going to play with this until I get the speed I want. And in order to do that, I'll simply right click and I'll choose time stretch. And I know that if I change this to 20, because I've played with it, I'll get something that's close to what I want. So I'm going to drag, and I can see now it's going a little bit faster. Now that I've roughly got the speed I want, I need it to repeat out to the 6-second mark. So I'm going to go to the Project tab, and I'll right-click on the alpha channel video, and I'll go to Interpret Footage Main. Down at the bottom, the very last entry is loop, and I'm going to put in a large number because it doesn't make a difference how many iterations I have as long as it makes the 6-second mark. So anything beyond that won't be recorded. So I'll just stretch it out now. And now I'm going to place it back over the image of the rocket in the video below. And I'm going to hit P for position and drop the first keyframe for position. I'm now going to go to 6 seconds at the end of my video, and I'm going to drag it so that it goes off completely off the screen. I'll zoom back on my comp just to make sure the fuse is off. Now I'm going to preview what I have thus far. Second time through gives me what's happening in real time. So I'll drag through. And now what I want to do is I need to mask it so that it doesn't appear on the drawing board while the paper illustration is playing. So I'll put the playback head at the beginning of the video clip with the alpha channel. And I'm going to go to Layer, Pre-compose Layer. I want to make sure that Move All Attributes is checked off. I have the option of renaming this if I choose. I'm going to click OK. You notice that when you introduce a pre-composed composition, the whole timeline fills in. I've left it exactly where I need to edit it so that if I chose, I could put my cursor over the left-hand edge, hold the Shift key, and snap. Now I'm ready to introduce a layer mask so that the image on top, the alpha channel rocket, will appear to be coming off the page. I'm going to hit Q on the keyboard, and it's going to take me to a rectangle tool to the left of a pen tool. And that rectangle tool, when the clip is selected, serves as a layer mask tool. I'm simply going to click and drag out here and then down to the edge of the paper. Now if I was to drag through or play my composition, it'll appear to have come through the page of paper. Now I'm not pleased with the values of the rocket coming off the page, so I've got to change the values and make them a little darker, closer to the drawing on the drawing board. So with that layer selected, I'm going to go to Effect, Color Correction, and I'm going to go to Levels. And in here I'll play with the levels to get something closer to what I want. So I know it has to be a little darker, and also has to be darker in value. I'm going to have to play with the gamma, which is the bar below, and that's something we kind of hesitate to use because it's kind of a radical tool, but I'm just going to play with that a little bit, and now I've got something more the way I would like it. Now that we have the animation complete, going the 6-second cycle, we need to bring in the audio clip. So I'm going to go to File, Import, or Command-I, and I'm going to get the audio clip provided, NASA Countdown, and I'm going to drag it onto the composition window. And it appears on top as an aqua-colored clip. Now, I'm looking for the point at which the countdown ends and the rocket noise explosion is audible, and that's at the point at which the hand lights the fuse. So I'm going to open that clip up, and I'm going to put a marker on the timeline so that I can slide the audio file down and find that point and line it up kind of easily. So if I go to the far right hand side of the timeline, there's an inverted tab. I'll click and drag that, holding the shift key to my playback head. Now I'm going to open up the waveform by clicking on audio and then waveform. And I'm going to drag, because I know visually where that explosion kind of takes place. There'll be a radical height difference to the audio file. Right here. I'm going to leave it there for a minute. Okay, and that seems to be working pretty well. Now I'm ready to export the movie. I'll put the playback head at the beginning of the timeline, making sure that the gray work area bar is stretched from 0 to 6 seconds. And I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Export, Add to Media Encoder. Once my file appears in the Media Encoder, I'm going to click on H.264 to build the preview. And if I needed to, I could drag through the bottom of the preview to confirm everything is intact. I'm going to change the output name, and I'll just use something that makes sense to me. And I'll save it to my folder. One thing I need to kind of reinforce is that in this whole process, you'd be working on your desktop, the CPU of the computer, not a drive, not an external drive that might be 72 dpi or a simple thumb drive, because then the application thinks that that other outside source is running the app and it could crash on you. Now I'm going to go down to basic video settings. Now for the tutorial, so this could be emailed to me, we made the height and width both 400 pixels. And then we dropped the frame rate to 10 frames per second. And you can change any of these features by clicking on the check in the checkbox, and it will give you an active window to edit. I'm going to click OK. And in the upper right hand corner of Media Encoder, there appears a green triangle. And when I click on it, it'll render my file.